Hey, everybody. Welcome to this very special presentation. I'm so happy that you could join me on this today. My name is Anish Majumdar. I'm going to be leading you through here in the next 30 minutes or so on a little bit of a journey here on the topic of why they'd rather hire a stranger than promote you. And, if that title kind of gets your blood up a little bit, if it gets you being like, hey, what the heck, and maybe even gets your blood going a little bit, good. Okay. The goal is not to upset you. The goal is to hopefully wake you up a little bit and open your eyes, if it's possible, to a way of getting the things that you want that right now you may be feeling. My desire is great. There's no pathway, and nothing I do is making that better. That's what the goal of this presentation is. And I just want to be clear for those of you who are just, being aware of the work that I do. I'm a coach who is plugged in when leaders are sick and tired of education and knowledge, and they want the result. When people are ready to not just fight for the promotion, but land it in the next 3 months, I'm the one they talk to. When people are ready, not just to explore a pivot to biotech, but they want the first 2 or 3 offers in hand in the next few months, I'm the one that they talk to. And the reason I wanted to do this session is because I don't see anyone talking about this. I'm seeing the vast majority of the people that I speak to who are high performers, who are diligent, who, like me, has a family. You've got all those responsibilities. By far, the number one narrative that I hear is, yeah, I'm pushing for this. Yeah, I should have gotten this bump up 2 years ago, 3 years ago. Maybe this year will be my chance. Or you know what, Anish? I thought 2 or 3 years ago that I should have put my feelers out there to explore what else was there. I didn't do that. Now it's too late. Now I'm in my 50s. I'm still a VP. It's been however many years, and I just want to see it through. I don't want to be reminded of the mistakes that I made. I'm seeing a lot of people like that who are somehow mistaking a situation that they can address with this existential judgment on who you are, what you can contribute, what you can't. And I think that's wrong. I think that if you're here, you've got something to contribute. And if you know that unfair third-party isms, whether it's a boss, whether it's a company, whatever that is, if you know that those have been the things that have been holding you back, I want you to start this session right here, fighting that voice inside that says this is just your lot in life. It's not. But when you're really capable, this is a trap you've got to be able to see your way through. Okay? So I want to jump into this. What are the rules of the room in some sense? Because I don't want this to be just another, good to know thing that you digest and throw away like a McDonald's meal. Okay? I want this to really make an impact. So how can you ensure that that's going to do it for you? Number one, shut down the notifications. Give me the privilege of some one-on-one time to look at this aspect of your leadership in your career. That'll really help. Number two, I'm going to be moving really quickly here. This is not a slideshow. This is not something that is meant to make you feel comfortable and allow you to sit back and just digest something, okay? The more you can really look at what I'm about to teach you here, not just as knowledge, but ask yourself in real time, how does that relate to me? How does that relate to my situation? And most importantly, how can I put that into practice right here and now? The more you're going to get out of this. And the more you just sort of type away, the more it's actually going to make this problem worse. Because as I'm going to show you, your desire to be a good student, your desire to be a high performer and keep your head down is now actively sabotaging where it is that you want to go. Okay? So 2,100 other calls, nearly 20 years into this. What are the big drivers? What's going to get you out, and how can we do that? First of all, I'm going to assume you're either a loyal operator who keeps getting passed over. You're either maybe a STEM or technical leader, right, who's watching your ROI collapse. You're someone who is dealing with compensation stagnation behind the scenes. Or behind the scenes, you're dealing with stuff like shrinking influence, right? That's a very common one that I'll see, where just when you should be leveling up, your boss is suddenly taking responsibilities away. They're taking resources away, right? Or they're stalling out not just you, but how your team members are advancing, right? And you know that something has gone really awry here, okay? So what does this cost you, right? And let's call this the curse of being the invisible overperformer, okay? Career growth, right? You become indispensable where you are, but just like Bill, someone I had the privilege of coaching a couple of months ago said he literally was like, he was passed over for a promotion in year one because they were like in the middle of like rapidly transitioning operations. Year two is when it's going to happen. In year two, when he got rejected for the promotion, it was literally because he had made himself so indispensable they couldn't imagine replacing him. So at what point do you actually get what you want, right? So of course, career growth stalls, right? And the longer that this goes and you accept this as a state of affairs, the more this like starts bleeding out beyond just a company and it's just becoming a larger career issue. Burnout, right? I don't know if you guys can relate to this. You know, I've gone through periods like that. Many of the people I've worked with have gone through periods like that. Bottom line, if you're giving out way more than you're giving in, and I mean that in every way possible, there's no other outcome but burnout. And if you don't think that that's going to happen to you, you're frankly delusional, right? Check out the stats, check out what the studies say, right? There's no way, right? So either you're burning the candle at both ends right now, or you're doing what I've seen a lot of other overperformers do is as hopelessness increases, you check out. So you literally fight your best instincts in order to only give enough to the job that doesn't make you feel terrible in the weekends. You know what I mean? Like only give enough. And that is such a losing proposition. And especially for someone who is a diligent leader, that is an especially bad way to go. It's not going to result in good outcomes, okay? Self-doubt creeps in, imposter syndrome like becomes a huge thing. And most of all, and I want to really highlight this, whatever the externalities may be, right? Whatever those negatives may be for you in your life that you're grappling with, as a coach, I would say by far the number one is what happens internally that people don't see. Because the longer something like this goes on, the more you preemptively start pulling your own punches. And that's where this becomes a different level problem. When you don't open your mouth in that meeting, even though we need that idea. When you don't challenge yourself to build that relationship, to follow up based on the pain that you've seen, to have that confidence to do that, you shut yourself up preemptively. You quiet yourself. You get rejected for that promotion so many times, you stop even asking for it, right? You internalize the blame and shame. And that puts you into a zone where all of this starts to snowball. And my real deep concern is I feel sometimes like there's like this shadow economy of like loudmouths and like bloviators and flat out bullies, right? We've all dealt with at least one CEO who's like that, who are secretly taking advantage of this like underclass of leaders who look good on paper, but underneath only one of these populations are happy. Only one of these populations feels in control. They're building a legacy. The other one just feels like they're holding on for dear life. And that I think is deeply unfair and deeply wrong, right? And so here are some of the big things we're going to cover right here and now. Okay, grab a notepad, grab a pen. I'm not going to spoon feed this to you, but I want you to really take this in leader to leader, okay? Number one, what's the core lie? We have it, okay? What's the core lie that overperformers internalize that keeps them stuck in pick me mode and makes it easier for others to present themselves as an authority figure and thereby land that role, right? Why leveling up your skills? And look, this is a huge thing I'm going to call out right now. There is no way right now, if you're taking this presentation, if it's resonating with you, right, as a part of your lived experience, get that idea that the answer to more invisible labor is invisible training and invisible credentialing, okay? That is just an excuse that is going to keep you away from the hard business of the relationships and doing this in the room, okay? If that doesn't happen, there's no way this is going to change. And if you keep feeding your mind the BS that says, let me just get this MBA and then 1 year from now, I'm going to be more conducive, you will not. It doesn't happen that way. Chances are You're already wildly overqualified for the role you already have. So what signal does it send if that person, rather than correcting that issue, doubles and triples up on the problem? It says you don't understand what your value is. In fact, to not solve this deeper issue, right, the schism of why you're not advancing, and adding more training, adding more education makes this worse, because it says you don't understand and you're desperate and you're doing the wrong things. So that is not the answer here. You spending more time invisible is not an answer to an invisibility problem, okay? Confidence hacks, motivational advice, okay? That thin crap is also not going to help you, right? When you're going up against your CEO or a board that, bottom line, loves your labor but has a chip on its shoulder about advancing you, right? That's not going to work. All that stuff just comes across as transparent. You need deeper, stronger, resilient mechanics, okay? And that's what we're going to talk about. Most importantly, how do you get rid of this baggage, the mental and emotional baggage, so you can start operating freely again? So the way forward that you are isn't about scarcity, which is the big ringing sign that this is going on in your life, and now moving into abundance. How far can we go? How far can we take this? Where can we go? What's the max of my impact? This amazing journey that I've been on in my adult life, what's that next chapter that brings a smile to my face? That's what I want you to start letting in. And until you break out of this, until you understand what's really going on and dare to not be invisible anymore, and I know that's a big if. Many of you, I could teach you, or anyone could teach you exactly what to do, but if you're being brutally honest with yourself, your ambitions pale in comparison to the safety you feel by being invisible. No matter how bad this is, you complaining keeps you in the place. You don't actually want to change. You just want to feel a little bit better with making these silent compromises. You like being ignored. You like being undervalued. You're okay with that, right? And if that's the case, that's okay. No problem at all, right? But my recommendation would be stop making yourself miserable, right? Stop pretending to be one thing and then driving yourself miserable when you're not, right? It's okay if that's the play, but there's no way to solve this problem, especially stasis, especially compensation, invisibly, okay? And if you take nothing else from this, take that in now. We need to see you, we need to feel you, we need to hear your presence. If you're not willing to do that, how can you ever expect anyone else to champion you, right? So what's the real problem here? Just let's be super, super clear, because we're honing in on it now, okay? This ceiling that you hit has nothing to do with your ability. That's why more training isn't going to help. That's why more education is not going to help. And guys, if this is resonating with you, drop questions, feedback that you're pulling in here in the comments. And what I'll do is I'll periodically hop in there and I'll do my best to answer them, engage with that. Okay. We got to cover a lot of ground. So I want to make sure that we're staying focused. So the core problem is that you're really mistaking a leverage problem with a performance problem. And it's understandable, because for all of us up to a certain place professionally, we were all rewarded for performance. Okay. So what I mean by that is, when you were starting out, how do you get an edge? Work harder, right? Refine more, right? Absorb more, right? Explain better, right? Defend, when you're challenged, right? And when you top out into leadership, when you reach a certain level, that all stops working, because in order for you to be in the room that you're in and above, we assume that you're a rock star at what you do. We know that you're dangerous at your skill set. I'm not interested. The CEO is not interested. No one is interested in you continuing to sell that when that's not what we're looking for from you anymore, okay? As a leader, some of the things we're looking for from you is ownership, steadiness, especially when conflict rises and you reach places where in the past you would hit overwhelm. They're looking for boundaries. Can you clearly see the delineation, even when talking with a much higher leader, between that which is necessary and under your purview and that which is not? And can you communicate that? Can you defend that? Or are you someone who, if anyone in the organization sends you a 4 p.m. Friday email with a bunch of crap in there, you instantly internalize that as part of your job, part of your responsibility, and you make this problem worse, right? Bottom line, the number one quality whether they'll tell you or not, and most of the time they won't, right? That they're looking for in a leader that they want to elevate or not, is, hey, how much are you willing to stand for and not stand for when the pressure hits? And that is a totally different goal, a totally different ball game, and a totally different set of things that you need to be looking at. Okay. And that right there is the biggest like mental shift you've got to start thinking here. Okay. Leverage. Okay. Leverage. Let me give you a visual. I want you to imagine, and sorry if this is a little un-PC, I apologize, but I want you to imagine that there's a beautiful woman or, a beautiful guy, someone in a restaurant who is like automatically drawing the eyes of everyone there. Okay. And so you're super attracted to this person, but there's so many suitors out there, right? And so the choice that everyone else is making is, if they can sit down opposite this person, they're just going to pitch. They're going to say, look, here's what I can do. Here's what I can do. And when she looks bored, you're going to try more. You're going to put more. You're going to throw more at that, right? All of these people are doing variations of the same thing. And the more desperately they try, the more they try to convince and explain and all of that, the less interested they are, right? Because it puts them into this mode, right? Imagine this is your employer. Imagine this is the company that you're at, right? You're spinning yourself in like a dervish, right? Doing the work of 2, 3, 4 people plus. And for many of you, I know that's not an exaggeration, right? So you're doing this work. You're proving. But guess what? She or he or they think that they know you. They think, based on all of this, that they know the sum total of who you are. You're reliable. You're valuable. You don't get me excited. You don't get me thinking like the leader that I am and feeling like the future is going to be there. Far from it. You are the known quantity. You are the boring known quantity, right? Meanwhile, who gets their attention? The person way off there in that corner, right? Who's not trying to get them, but is clear in who they are. They have an energy in who they are. They have an ownership of who they are, right? They understand there's a steadiness in terms of how they're engaging with people. They're not desperately looking for signals. They're not trying to see if you noticed or not. They're steady. You get the sense that they would be the same person here as they would be in any other situation, social or otherwise. There's boundaries there. If someone gets up in their face, they're not immediately going in there. They're not overwhelmed. They understand who they are. They can maintain that sense of presence. They can maintain that posture that's there, right? They can handle this in a different way, and they attract through how they signal. They don't attract through what they can do, right? And that's what I want you to start thinking about. That's the power. When you've been seeing people who've been like rising up really, really quickly, I want you to fight that second tier way of thinking that tries to like cop out and say they're just a political player, they're whatever, different race, different culture, whatever. Get that nonsense out of your head, okay? Any of that stuff may be true once in a while, sporadically, but what is true almost all the time is that the person who beat you out for that promotion, okay, they were able to hold the room with presence and silence, by the way, not effort. They were able to go toe-to-toe with your boss and not fall into the same traps you did, right? They were able to engage with people at every stage of the hierarchy as a peer, right? Without constantly relitigating or negotiating their authority, right? They're able to tolerate tension and conflict. They're able to set those boundaries, and they're able to completely demonstrate under pressure non-reactivity, a proactive sense of where they're going. So their identity, right, is far more than just the reliable like doer or the good-natured executive who wants a chance, right? This is someone that we can trust to say, yeah, run with this, okay? This is the line, all right? This is where we leave behind you stuck in this invisible bucket forever. But it starts with your choice right here and now, okay? I've already given you like a light that if you can see it, you should be running towards, okay? It took me, as someone who is not to the manor born, who started working with leaders at every level with imposter syndrome screaming. I'm a child of Bengali parents who grew up in Montreal, Canada, moved to the States, built a life. I will always probably look at myself on some degree as an outsider. I will always look at myself on some degree as someone who is not to the manner born when I'm talking with people who have the pedigree that I don't, who had the experience that I don't. The question is that the worst thing that could happen to me, or is that the most powerful advantage I have? Because I bring a perspective, a strength, a street smarts, an in the trenches knowledge of what works and what doesn't that they will never, ever, ever be able to approximate. So do I need to go on their wavelength, or do they need to meet me on mine? Well, if we're talking about moving your career forward, there's only one wavelength, mine. Right? Can you bring that level of certainty to what you do? Because the second you can embody that energy, and these are things that you can develop, these are things that you can be coached on, if there's a willingness in you to step forward, right? These are the things that change the whole narrative forever, okay? So shift number one, and I hope to gosh, this like gets your blood going, okay? I want it to, okay? Shift one, kill the people pleaser. From a recovering people pleaser who will always be probably a good student on some level, okay? Kill it. And what do I mean by this? You cannot lead while you're like auditioning for approval, okay? And here's the thing I want you to understand, okay? Like, there's a difference between being in the room, discussing, and honestly coming to an outcome versus being nice versus like acquiescing really too soon and giving up and feeling resentful afterwards. That's not leadership, right? That's people pleasing. That's giving up your own authority, your confidence, your agency in order to get a yes from the other person. And I'm telling you this right now, if this has been going on too long with your boss, there's no way that you're going to be able to fix this in your own role, okay? There's no way. Because that is such a huge subservient like signal, okay? Like it's false niceness. People pleasing is fake. It's manipulative. It's weak. It's docile. It's everything we don't want. And especially the higher up you go, true leaders can tell the difference because they need people who are not going to fold that easily. That's why people pleasing, especially, you know, I'll just be very honest with you. I'll work a lot of times with Indian men and women who are high level executives in Silicon Valley, right? And like a big thing there, right? And it's not just Indians, but there's a lot of cultures where like being a good student, acquiescing, like being willing to clean the toilets, as a client of mine once told me, if it meant being able to stay in that company, that was a virtue, right? But boy, oh boy, oh boy, does that kill your ability to elevate past mid-management, right? Once you want to be more than just like, you know, a weight-bearing, you know, animal, when you want to actually be a peer, then all of that stuff needs to be neutralized. It needs to go away. Because as long as you do that, you're sending out a big signal that says, me getting a yes from you is more important than my truth. And that's not a leader, okay? So what does that look like? Some things I want you to specifically be aware of right now, and I want you to mark it down as something to like, ooh, that's me, okay? Saying yes when you know the scope or the project is wrong. Agreeing to move down a path that you know is bad for you and your team, if not bad for your company. Absorbing responsibility for something without the authority for it. So someone basically pawns it on you and you have no choice but to silently do it, right? Softening positions to avoid friction, right? You don't want to get into that disagreement, right? Even though that is the necessary good disagreement to have, and the goal should be how to have it responsibly. So you soften. It's not so bad. Yeah, we can think about it in the next quarter. Yeah, we can stick a pin in it, right? The greatest cop out like phrase of them all: stick a pin in it, run it up the flagpole, right? Waiting for alignment instead of setting direction. Who are you waiting for? If it's in your domain of expertise, why aren't you just running with it and letting it go? Why aren't we exercising it's better to ask forgiveness than permission mentality? When it comes to your leadership and what you do, that should be the right way to do it, right? And yet you're waiting for collaboration from people who are not interested. They're looking for you to lead so they can follow. Why is there such a hesitation in you to do that, right? So what happens when you're doing this stuff, right? And I'd be willing to bet there's not a person taking this video training right now who doesn't fall under one, if not all of these regularly. Okay. The problem with it is you don't get overtly punished, because when you do stuff like this, you're the best friend of bullies. You're the best friend of anyone at that company who wants something for nothing, right? How many people of those people have stolen your best ideas after you've done the majority of the work, right? And not only do they not feel bad about it, they're surprised if you object, right? You train people how to treat you, right? And the worst is when you do this stuff, you're training yourself in that's what's acceptable. I've spoken to a lot of people who will beat their chest on a Zoom session with me about what they'll accept and what they won't, right? Beat their chest, but then they'll go into work and someone who's a subordinate, honestly, will be able to make them feel so hot under the collar that they collapse or they freeze, right? Right up in the room where they can't. So, like, it's a very real thing. And I want you to see, like, this is the behavior that makes it easy for people, even if you've got the track record, you've got the pedigree. This is the stuff that opens up. Let's bring in someone else. Let's at least talk to some other people, right? Because like, I don't want this try hard energy. You know, we got a very difficult client that we're going to be dealing with in Q2. I don't know if I can trust him on this, right? So here's the stand, okay? And I want you to really like write it down and ask yourself, can you gear around this? Because there's no way out of this people-pleasing trap that you're in without this, okay? Write this down. I'm done trading approval for access. Okay? So it like changing this, killing the people pleaser, it doesn't mean being aggressive, right? But it does mean you stop this habit of self-erasing yourself. And every single one of the behaviors that I've said, okay, are aspects of self-erasure. So naming trade-offs instead of absorbing them, setting boundaries instead of hoping for fairness. And listen, if you're an overworker, you don't have boundaries with yourself. A lot of times the deepest coaching I do, right, long before it emanates into the offer, into the outcome, is actually showing someone how to hold their own boundaries, how to stop being the jailer in your own workflow, right? And so requiring authority when accountability is assigned. If you have it, run with it. If you need to make the decision, make it. Do it. Because that's demonstrated leadership. And you need to have that. You need to show that you can do that, because otherwise you're all talk, no action. And that's not leadership, right? Finally, letting tension exist without rushing to resolve it. Now that's a big, big ask, isn't it? But that's something where if you're serious about getting the outcomes that you deserve, you're going to have to start building a tolerance for that. If people are freaking out, if people don't get it, right? I'm a dad to 3, right? My eldest is 12. My youngest is 8. Wow, I had to think about that. Sorry. My youngest is 8. And so, you know, they freak out all the time. They fight with each other all the time. They get my goat. They get my wife's goat all the time, right? But like, it's not our job to like bend to all of that. It's our job to actually, in some sense, demonstrate the opposite, right? How you can get upset and you can navigate things and it's not going to break you, right? And that's what I want you to think about here, okay? I'll give you an example. Bernard was someone that I worked with recently who was in the middle of a career transition, right? He's working like, there's no exaggeration, upwards of 70 hours, sometimes up to 80 a week, right? His family is a rumor to him at this point, right? He's working. When we start working together, ostensibly the goal is, hey, I just want to find other roles that are at the C-suite level, maybe that has a little bit better work-life balance. But as he started to stand up for himself, as he started to understand, like, okay, I got to kill this people pleaser. Before we ever look at stuff like branding and outreach or any of that stuff, we got to solve this stuff. That's when he started to realize, he's like, man, he's like, no wonder I'm working 70, 80 hours and I'm feeling like angry at the people who aren't. I put myself into this situation. I goose-stepped all the way. I broke every one of the boundaries. In fact, when I started the role, I was coming in with boundaries that if I had just defended those or protected those, would have made my life a lot easier and would have kept a lot of the blame from unfairly like going on my shoulders. He realized that in a very real sense, he had made that possible, right? And for him, to translate into a COO role that now allows him to work the way that he wants to, and all of that was really about holding boundaries for himself and daring, right, for the first time in his life after 20 plus years, daring to say, what I expect from other people is at the same level, the same caliber of what I expect from myself. I'm not going to hold myself to a standard that is 50 times higher than the person I'm speaking with, and then we pretend we're peers. No way. That's on you. That's for us to decide. That's not on me, right? And that's crucial, right? And Bernard, thank you for hopping on here. Great to see an old face. Hope you're doing well. After this session wraps, be sure to send me a message. Let me know what the latest is in terms of what's going on, okay? So that's shift one. Kill the people pleaser. Number two, okay, stop leaking your state. And let me make this like really, really clear. There is not a single person that I have ever coached since 2009 who has been in this problem, right? Who is trying to solve the disappointing results of a career that isn't where it needs to be and isn't in line with what you can do, right? And who you are. There's not a single one of them that doesn't have a problem with this. And what do I mean by that? This, no matter what you think, is the be all, the end all, the solve all for everything, isn't it? Right? Nervous system, mindset, all of that crap, right? It's all second tier. And I'm saying that because that's what I believed for well into like my early 30s, right? That look, I can think my way out of any problem. If there's a leadership issue, I can fix it, right? If there's an environmental issue, relational issue, I can fix it, right? But the problem is, Einstein said this, I'm paraphrasing this, you cannot solve a problem while you're in the same state that created the problem, right? Can't do it. So you cannot be in that room for another Friday meeting that's supposed to be like defining strategy and is actually about defending your job, right? Because everyone else depends on thinking of you as the screw up made good, right? There's no way for you to be in that zone and magically think above, rise above, right? As we've been saying, your performance is not the problem, leverage is. To go one step deeper, your words are not the problem, your state is, okay? And most overperformers have the most junkiest, non-existent way of dealing with stress, which is usually suppression. You have no idea how to actually handle real conflict, real doubt. When you're in that make or break, and I say, I don't buy a single thing that you're saying here. I think the strategy is wrong, right? You have no idea how to actually handle that. You just think ignoring it makes it go away. And you show up in that room looking like a child because everyone who is can control their nervous system on some degree, right? Who's primed themselves can instantly see the fake, right? The one who's shaking over here saying, I'm confident. Suppression makes anxiety worse. Suppression makes these things worse. And all you know how to do is ignore them, which is suppression, right? So here's what's happening. You're in that room, right? And you're locked in here because you would love everything to just be a mental game, wouldn't you? Right? That's the step out of that, and boy, what do we have, right? So you think they're listening for your logic, how brilliant your argument is, right? How complete, how accurate you are, right? The data is going to tell the story, right? The number of times I've heard that, the data will tell the story, and then you get screwed over. What happened? What happened? The data was right. Well, who said the data was the decision point, right? So you think you're going for logic and reasoning, right? Here's what people are scanning for, okay? Again, the steadiness and the calm. Can you actually hold fast? Are you resilient in that way? How oriented are you, right? Do you have a sense of direction and flow? If you're talking with a group, do you know who to direct the attention to? Do you know how to keep it and move it back on flow? Or do you get stuck, waylaid by every random question that's there, right? Tolerance for tension, right? And most importantly, do you stay centered when challenged? The question, right, that they're really asking, right, that you need to answer is, can I trust this person when things go sideways? And when you meet uncertainty at your role, vying for a role, creating a role out there, that's all sideways stuff, okay? So that's what they're really looking at, right? And if you've done no work in that, right, if you have no idea, I promise you, you're falling apart there. And then no one cares about your words. Like no one is like, it's like you're trying to till a field that you haven't put seeds in, you haven't watered, you've done nothing. You just think that your mind, your energy, your will is going to solve it. And it just never does, right? And so here's what happens. You think that they're going for this, they're pulling up this, you notice a dissonance. So here's what you do: talk faster, right? Explain more than necessary, right? You're constantly qualifying. Here's what I've seen. Well, I don't know if we're going to do that. Well, maybe not. And if it makes sense, if operations is on board, if sales is on board, we're going to be okay, right? You think you're being thorough. You think you're solving it, right? But again, what you're signaling to the room is, hey, I'm not sure I believe myself. So I need you to believe me. I need you to be convinced. And at the leadership level, the more you do that, the more it's like that beautiful woman, man at the restaurant just pulls right back in their chair, pulls right back. You put them into a buyer mode, and you're the seller, right? And the second this posture is here, you're toast. There's nowhere for you to go there, right? So, when you look at the person who beat you out for the role, right? I'll give you a real life example of that. We have someone come in, venture capital firm, coming in from a different industry. The final interview meeting is literally just with the founder, who's got a bit of a media presence, spending 40 minutes having a friendly conversation. The emails that this person got leading up to this meeting were, hey, excited to meet this guy, excited to meet you, we're going to go over a couple of points here, have a friendly discussion. Shows up literally for an hour, gets goes through the most doubting Thomas person that you can think of. Not agreement on a single thing. That's what it felt like. Not a single aspect, right, of what this guy could do, the way he can, drive change, drive growth. All of that was just shut down. Now, you might be in a situation like that and say, okay, this is a great reason not to work with this person. Absolutely, right? But we're not everyone, and there's no accounting for taste. This guy was able to meet the situation, have the dialogue, think like, okay, I don't think we're going to be getting along, but not flummoxed so much as surprised. So let's talk about that. Here's why. How is that relevant for what you guys are doing? Okay, here's what our goal was. What's the goal here? It seems like you're not on board with that. What am I not seeing, right? If there's something that you're seeing, show me. I want to know about that. So there's resistance all the way through, but what the owner was doing, which is really a pressure test, right, never got through to him. It didn't mean that he didn't get hot under the collar. It didn't mean that he didn't think what he was going to think. But the way that he engaged demonstrated a steadiness, right, in himself, a steadiness and a non-people pleasing that for a strong, successful person like who is used to having ass kissers around, that's the person that they need. So he leaves, right? Calls me up, Anish, how'd it go? I absolutely the worst. What do you mean? What happened, right? And he walks me through it, right? Offer inside of 24 hours. And then when he couldn't do it because of family responsibilities, they upped it nearly 40%, right? And kicked in a whole bunch of other stuff. So it was easy for his family, his kids to switch schools, all of that. And that wasn't a negotiating tactic. That was him legitimately being like, I don't know if I want to work with someone where there's going to be this much friction, right? What's the need here, right? And then you realize, okay, there's real need, right? So guaranteed, if you've been passed over for an external hire and you're wondering like, what's up with this person, right? They don't have the same background. No, they don't. But having composure and unshakable authority under duress like that is worth way more than what you think you being entrenched there actually is worth, right? So Bethany was someone who I worked with who came from like big tech, who classic issue with this, an overworker, right? So every interview, everything, like her whole body is like amped up like this, ready to answer everything, right? Do less, doing less, changing the positioning, changing how she's coming across, right? So that when she actually decides to spend her precious time, she's not coming in with a whole like slide deck based on no information. She's having a real conversation. And the specificity of her questions determines where we go, and also does a better job of speaking for her than any slide deck ever could. And that was one of the many things she did right to open it up, to stop being just another like, oh, great, talented woman, in big tech, to this is her. This is a Bethany problem. We need her and only her. If you can get her on the phone, get her on the phone, right? That's how you become not a commodity, but a true one-of-one leader. And if you believe in your work enough to get better at stuff like this, if you care enough not to be invisible and marginalized, right? Believe me when I tell you that you most probably have something to contribute there, something that is worth fighting for, something that is worth you standing your hand, your face, your body up and saying, yeah, I'm worth being noticed. I'm worth that, right? Shift 3, and this kind of, again, we're going to call out what I see as the biggest things that hold back people in this situation. Look, willpower is not a system. I know you think that you're so smart and you're a hard worker, and you are, okay? But under pressure, it's a totally different ballgame. Under pressure, you don't rise to the level of your willpower. You fall to the level of your conditioning, right? And that's why, by the way, despite all of your practice silently or whatever, right? Reminders go away, tactics collapse, and confidence evaporates, right? There's no way for willpower to sustain you. A system can, right? When I work with people, I guide them through something called the press system, right? And that's a 5-part system that allows you to like fully own your leadership presence in a way that you never have before. And it starts from before the room. It goes all the way to regulating yourself under pressure, communicating as a leader, not as a try-hard good student, fraud, but as someone who can actually apply leverage-driven communications, someone who can signal executive authority so you don't get screwed over like this and invisibly take it, and someone who can do all of this in an effortless way, by which I mean they don't see the gears. They don't see you running for the next like hack or tactic. We should be able to see you, meet you eye to eye in any room and feel that steadiness, feel what you can bring that no one else can, right? And if you're unable to do that, as I said, if you're unable to make yourself non-invisible to do that, there's no way that you're going to get anything more than what an invisible overworker gets, which is not much, right? So when you start addressing this stuff, right? When you start kind of arcing away from endless performance and into leverage, right? What starts happening is instead of you feeling like you have to like chase the room, people start perceiving you as like the stable reference point in the room. Okay. That's when your presence stops getting like this and chasey and starts stilling. So what happens? You'll notice people will defer to you. Challenges lower. Influence, especially your influence when you silently listen, goes up. Decisions can move into ownership and conclusion faster. And I want you to be very clear here. None of that happened because you started bloviating, becoming someone that you're not, right? It's because you started implementing a system that worked for you, that controlled every single one of these major drivers and gave you a sustained presence. And once you do that, you don't need 100% across these 5 dimensions. You add in 10% into an area that you have 0% in, like emotional regulation, your whole dynamic changes forever. You start putting up points across those boards, your whole life changes. And I don't just mean professionally. I mean, listen, if you're, I'll just be real with you. You know, I'm a coach. I teach people who should be confident, right? Who should be authority figures, how to behave that way. I used to be that kid with no big brother who, I know when I'd move into a new neighborhood, I thought the price of admission for friendship was like, here, take all my baseball cards, here, take all of this, right, that I have, because I couldn't imagine a peer-to-peer friendship sort of taking place there, right? And that pissed me off so much as I got older because I felt so cheated. I felt like not only were there no friends, people felt perfectly fine taking all of that and then not looking back and not even questioning it. And it felt like a double or triple loss, and I hated that feeling so much, right? I really, 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 as I got older, wanted to make sure that not just for myself, but for anyone who's doing the good work, but just you haven't been exposed to like learning this and putting it into practice, I don't want you to feel that way. And I want you to hear me, like, that's not the price of admission for a life here. That's not the price of admission for the life that you want, or a successful leadership journey on your terms. Like, it's not part of it, right? And so this is the shift. And once you can start kind of moving in this way, the change you will see in the room, in the outcomes, will give you the encouragement you need to hopefully turn this into a lifelong practice. The reality is, like, for a lot of people who are like invisible like this, right, who get passed over, right, when they shouldn't, the reality is there's some shame in there. There's some aspect in you, there's something driving you to over deliver and under engage in this way. And whether that means you think that, you're going to be found out as an imposter. And I've heard stuff like this, right? From people who are so qualified, you wouldn't believe it, right? When they see through me, they'll realize I've been faking. When they see through me, they'll realize I'm not worth whatever, the visa sponsorship, right? When they see through me, they're not seeing the talented CEO. They're seeing the entrepreneur who has like a floaty sort of background there, right? There's some triggers there that are playing a track that, when the pressure increases, makes it far likely that you're going to operate and hear things like, maybe, they're right about me. Maybe, despite me being overqualified, I don't think I'm actually ready, right? Maybe this is the ceiling, right? I will talk to people like that. And if you're talking with me and you're having an exploratory dialogue where we're trying to see what's going on, one, you're going to get massive clarity into your situation, right off the bat. But the second thing is, you're going to come up to date with the truth, right? And there are people that I've spoken to, many people I've spoken to, who, when you get underneath the hood, you realize, like, they don't want anything better. They just don't want to feel bad. So talk to a coach or do something to, give yourself some methadone, but that's not what we're talking about here, right? If you let this go too far, it's going to become a part of your identity, and then no one can help you, right? Because you're too far down, you're too far into the water, and everything here is moving too quickly. And the people who you want the outcomes from, they don't have that problem. So they're moving at a 3, 4, 5 pace, right? At some point, you have to be sick and tired of this crap. You have to be willing to realize, like, there's not going to be a day here where you wake up without shame or imposter syndrome or feeling like you have to overcompensate. So the question is, do you act now with everything that you can towards an outcome that you want? Or do you say you're unable to? And in my experience, if you're unable to galvanize to action today, it is highly unlikely that you will be able to do it tomorrow, when you're 1 day, 1 week, 1 year older, 1 year less energy, 1 year more negative reinforcement. It doesn't happen that way. That's cope, right? Just being very, very clear here, right? Because I'm not, we've been talking about a lot of like changes and shifts, but I want to be very, very clear here. Very, very few of you are going to implement. An even smaller number are going to be curious enough to actually put that into high stakes. And the tiniest fraction is going to want actual help to actually, right here, right now, this year, change the reality in their lives. It's far easier to take in this information, noodle it over, which means basically neutralizing real effort towards it, right? Emotional mastery is not suppressing emotion. It's not pretending you don't care, and it's not powering through. It's letting these types of uncomfortable feelings register. It's allowing yourself to realize, like, hey, I'm whatever this thing is, that's not my story. I don't have to agree with that story. And it's holding necessary posture and comms anyway. That's what we're here to do, right? We get the life-changing outcomes that change everything for us, not when we're ready, when that window opens. And if you're willing to walk through, now's the time. Now's the moment. Stop waiting, thinking that it's even going to be around a year from now, 3 years, 5 years. I can't tell you the number of people who have let that window close and they spend the rest of their lives knocking on a closed door. Don't do that, okay? That's the difference between feeling pressure and being owned by it. That's the difference between discomfort, which we all feel, and disintegration, right? And again, the person who beat you out for that last role, okay, they understand how to do that. They understand. They've got bad things in their history. They've got vulnerability points. But it's how they choose to engage with it. It's how they choose to meet it that tells us where they really are. The thing with shame is that it's invisible, right? Like no one's going to know. Like you're not going to tell me, I'm not going to tell you, right? But it is the gatekeeper behind every other emotion you have. It's the silent censor behind every good idea you don't share. Behind every single time when you know you need to make a stand for your team member and you freaking don't. You cop out and you justify, right? That's shame. Telling you that, hey, you know what, you shouldn't have. That's shame, not doing the right thing. I remember working with Dale, C-suite leader, but perennially number 2. And if you look underneath the surface, this is someone, again, overworking, who is victimized by bully CEOs, who basically offload the worst decisions onto him, give him the most thankless stuff, and cherry pick the best ones. Happens more often than you might think, right? So for him, it's like, hey, Anish, I want to make sure I don't become a number 2. Well, we start working on this. He starts talking with leaders, right? And we realize he's doing amazing in the room. He's having a breakdown before and after. That the real problem was that it had been so long since someone had been in his corner. It had been so long since someone could look him in the eye and say, Dale, I believe in you. You don't need to go through this alone, but it is going to be in you in that room. I will help you to the best that I can. I will help you script what you need to script. I will help you reconnect and still that nervous system. I will be there on the phone with you 10 minutes after you have that meeting, so you know there's a continuity there. But I need you to not be invisible anymore. I need you to not just silently take it. Because what we also realized, he'd been treating himself not as a number 2, but as like a number 20. But also the way in which he was going through the hiring process brought out the same subservient signals that made him catnip to bully CEOs. The way he was trying to get that role and the actions he was taking was completely backfiring to the extent that the people he wanted to work with were like desperate, and the people that he didn't want to were like, yes, desperate, right? It's a big one. And for those of you who are in transition, stop thinking that, all of this crap pushed you out of your last role. This next role is going to solve it, because guaranteed the way in which you're trying to solve this thing is bringing out every single one of these subservient tactics, is bringing out every single one of these. Hiring is an elevated version of the stresses that you meet inside of the role itself. It's not a reprieve, right? And so it's just going to repeat. It's just going to repeat, and it's just going to repeat until you interventionally solve this, okay? So that brings me to the last shift, and the one that in many ways probably separates the people who, I'm getting like updates from them over email, on my group, on my Facebook group, on LinkedIn, the people who actually change it, right? The biggest thing is that they look at this as a wake-up call to not suffer in silence anymore. Because out of everything here, the biggest thing that says, I'm not ready for this, is you going back to yourself, to your red flags, to your biases, to your judgments, and putting all of that back on you. If it's not clear, no leader gets to the top on their own. It's a myth. Nobody gets to just tackle all their insecurities on their own. It's a myth. Nobody becomes perfect at performance and leverage on their own through trial and error. The people who try run out of time. They either give up, or it takes them so long, they spend so many freaking years stuck in stasis that guess what? Nobody wants to promote someone in their 60s for the role that you should have had 15 years ago. I'm just going to say it very, very clearly. Nobody wants to take a chance on the person who never bet on themselves and is coming off of 7 years of stagnation at a tech company no one gives a crap about anymore. No one gave a crap about that company in the 90s. Why would they care about it now? So the biggest thing here is the longer you do this alone, the more you don't solve it, and you're just letting time, the one thing you cannot afford to burn anymore, go through. And you're coming across old and amateurish, okay? So let's just kill that lie, okay, of I'll figure it out. Unless you've been sitting here, and guys, I actually had someone, I'm going to call it, this woman is a know-it-all, okay, who literally, after one of my sessions, said, good stuff, but literally everything you told me was stuff that I know, so it actually confirmed it, right? That's a person who has reached as high as they're going to go, because that's someone who is in such denial and defensiveness that they're literally not looking for help. They're looking for reasons to stay stuck doing the stupidity that they do. Don't do that, okay? I'll figure it out as a lie. I'll work on it. I'll reflect. I'll read. I'll practice. I just need more time. They are all the cope of an overworker, okay? All of those things give you the cop out of being back silent, alone, making this problem worse, not being able to provide for your family the way that you want, and still being virtuous, still being a hero. Don't fall for that. Don't settle for that. When people who have half as much talent as you do live lives that you can't even dream of anymore because it's been so long since you thought abundantly, right? Here's the translation, right? I'll work on all that. I want a solution that doesn't require exposure, right? And exactly that is why you stay trapped. I hope you understand, like, through this journey here that we've been on a little bit here, this work is not theoretical. It's not woo-woo, right? It's live. It's relational. It shows up in every micro moment, in your tone, pacing, silence, boundaries, reactions under pressure, right? And the exact second you start negotiating your state is when it starts falling out of whack, right? When you try to solve it on your own, and I've done that, okay, you're going to overcorrect based on one bad meeting. You're going to undercorrect because you don't want conflict, and you have no one in your corner to say, hey, there's a difference between bad conflict, reactive conflict, and this. This person needs to, you guys need to come to a new understanding now. I will guide you through it. This has to happen now. Okay? If you don't, they will keep attacking you silently and keep taking advantage of you, and you cannot allow that to happen anymore. No one gets to silently abuse you anymore. No one gets to take advantage of your labor anymore. No one gets to silently make you feel lesser than as the price of access anymore, okay? And if you're alone, all you have are your good thoughts and your demons, right? All your insecurities. And those demons and insecurities are being reinforced by the situation that you're in, not the good thoughts, right? You rationalize fear as responsibility, and you call it patience when it's actually permission seeking, right? Just be patient. When you know there's nothing else for it, and patience will not help you here. Patience plays into them, not you, okay? So the last shift here, what did the people who beat you out for this, what did they do? They looked at mentoring not as a salvation. I don't think there's anyone here, right? I'm not going to say it. No one should. No one can fix this for you. This is your leadership journey and what you choose to do or don't do with it, right? But what mentoring can do, right, is in real time, we can decode what's happening for you at your role, in transition, in the relationships that you're building, right? So there's no paranoia, there's no gaslighting. There's two leaders who are actually attacking this in a strategic way instantly, right? You get direct feedback on how your presence is actually landing. Not what you think, not the lie of a performance review that you got, that they gave you just so you'll shut up for another year at your role that you've outgrown, okay? Real feedback. Feedback that you can move on now, right? A practice space, right? Can you do these things in a way that allows you to get the kinks out, that allows you to be able to have that resiliency without immediately going into the shame spiral? Practice is the right way to do it, with stakes, with people who are not your family members or people who are not seeing it, but people who work with people at your level and above every single day, right? The ability to make moves, okay, every single week without spiraling and going backwards. In order to get out of this is going to take sustained change, effort, and then as the outcomes come in, the willingness to keep embracing, keep moving forward. Don't go back into old patterns. Don't let yourself fall back into that. And that's a journey that will be lifelong, right? Take it from an introvert, take it from a people pleaser. If I'm not working on this, if I'm not building on it, if I'm not getting support for it, I'm going backwards to where I don't want to be. That's the binary thing here, okay? Doing it alone is letting your demons win the day. Doing it with someone else is saying nothing I'm dealing with right here is bigger than where I'm going. And that is a life-changing shift, right? So the stand here is simple, right? Are you done being the only person in your corner? Right? Are you done being the only cheerleader that's there? Because the truth is, if you could think your way out of this, you already would have, right? Solo effort, which you've been overdoing, has brought you to this place and no further. And mentoring isn't hand-holding, right? It's how you finally stop bleeding time and intelligently start compounding authority, right? This is how we do this right now. This is how we move forward. If this makes sense for you, zero pressure. As I said, this is most certainly not for everyone, but let me briefly share one link here for those of you who want to pressure test this with me. Grab this link right now, write it down, take a screenshot of it here, this Calendly link. I have a couple of spots I'm opening right here. I'm just interested in the 2 or 3 people right now who like they're impelled right now to take some action. Okay. If that's you, we can spend some time diving deep into this. I'd like to see exactly what it is that you're experiencing. I want to see if I can start helping you implement some change here. In the wider change that you need to make happen, if you are obsessed with outcomes right now, obsessed with actually changing it, we can certainly talk about that. If not, it'll still be a blow-away conversation that will take you further than anyone else who has silently and invisibly taken this training. Okay, so hope that makes sense for you guys. I hope that this was eye-opening to you. You know what to do in terms of the next steps. I celebrate that part of you that is done being invisible. I celebrate the part of you that is done being the B-word boy or the B-word girl to that bully in your company. And I celebrate you for finally doing something different and showing your loved ones what a hero is actually like. For everyone else, good luck.